Well, welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. I am so thrilled to have a special guest today. This is a podcast that we have been talking about, we've been having on a regular basis internally at KLC. And really for the past 6 months have been thoughtfully and carefully thinking and planning for what the future sort of philosophy of KLC is going to drive how we make decisions around the programs that we build, how we support our clients, all of the things. So I mentioned last week in last week's podcast intro that we are running a 6-week really awesome series around thought leadership. And this week, I have invited our very own KLC Strategic Growth Advisor, Krista Donargo, to join us to talk about some of the really incredible things that we're working on and to really plant some seeds for us around a program that we're going to be kicking off during our 3-day workshop at the end of the month. So I mentioned that we are going to be hosting a program January 29th through 31st. And Krista is going to be joining me to share masterfully the education and strategy around our proprietary methodology, ACE, to help our clients and you, Goddess, develop your thought leadership, become a more dynamic presence in your business and in your industry, and really just become a better communicator overall. So excited to have you here, Krista. Welcome to the Fierce Factor.
How excited to be here. I'm a
Yay.
fan. I'm a fan of the podcast too.
And
So
she is
I'm no
so joy.
different.
All right. So bear with me. I'm still working through this nasal stuff. But Krista, I'm glad you have your melodic voice to balance me out here. But so I want to first just kind of introduce you, and I'll start by talking about why I chose, to bring you as our ace onto the team for what we have coming up this year and beyond. And some of the really cool contributions that you've already made to many of our clients inside of our academy. So what's so interesting is when we brought Krista on, we were really looking for a growth advisor who had experience in coaching and advising on the business side. And as I got to know her better and see how brilliant she was at really, I think one of our clients said her mind voodoo or something like that, and like unleashing, that sort of next level of confidence in our clients and seeing how the women that she's working with are coming out just to magically have a different level of energy and enthusiasm and confidence and clarity around their message, around how they communicate and articulate their message, and just showing up as different kind of women. It was something that I felt like every single woman really needs that that next level coaching on how to better communicate what is important to them, what their viewpoints are, what their perspectives are, and to move others, right? To influence others. So Krista has previously, she's come from experience of developing executive leadership and CEOs of Fortune, government and Fortune 500 and 100 companies, companies like Bausch and Lomb, Google, Apple, CDC, as to name a few. And that's the thing. I started thinking about like female founders, especially in our industry. And for me, as you all, if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, know that last year I spent some time working on developing my own keynote talk and my, I guess, better understanding of how to communicate on stage. Because I think what happens is we become founders of businesses and all of a sudden we are on a stage. We are leaders. We are expected to be able to not just share our vision, but break that vision down into these really tangible sort of pearls and pieces of motivation that are going to get our team to want to take action. And we have to be this dynamic presence, and nobody's ever taught us how to do that. And so Krista, I want to just sort of open up, tell us a little bit about you and how your experience has brought you to a place of feeling so passionate about helping female entrepreneurs really express their voice?
Yeah. So my background personally began in the acting and modeling world. I somehow found myself in that world and then quickly realized it was a skill I had to develop, and not just a skill in terms of acting and modeling, but presence. And also, how do I present myself to the people that I want this job from, that I want, and I started to realize, okay, I want something from someone. How am I going to, change my execution, my delivery, all the things to get that thing that I want. So that was sort of like my intro into this world of, how am I coming across? What
Mm,
do I want from someone? And how am I going to get that thing? Like, what am I going to do to actively get that thing that I want? So, of course, I was on stages in front of cameras, whether I was doing a play or movie or something that was more creative, or I was hired on the commercial end to like promote a shampoo or a skincare product. So those were really different feelings as well, because my objectives were completely different.
mm,
And, as time went on, I quickly realized I wanted to get back into the world of academia and education. And I studied psychoanalysis and, quickly went into this world of therapy, communication, and coaching. And I later on started working with a communications company that really valued my background in psychoanalysis and acting. It was like kind of this like beautiful harmony of these two things. And they were like, you are exactly what we're looking for, because not just do you have this background, but you also understand this idea of a presence, and you understand this idea of how your voice, how your body, how you modulate those things are going to affect how you are received. So I quickly started working for this company that taught me so much. And I, as you mentioned, Kaylee, like I've worked with incredible people. I mean, when I first started doing this, I had imposter syndrome, because I was like, who am I to coach these Fortune 100 CEOs who can intellectually run circles around me? But I quickly realized that wasn't even what it was about. These people were, I don't want to say idiot savants, but they were really good at what they did, but they were terrible at communicating it or
mm.
making me feel anything for them. Which, if you're a CEO of a company and you're leading a team of people, you got to have some quality or presence or something that's magnetic. And they just lacked in that. So I quickly realized that that was something that I did possess, that I can actually give as a gift to others. And it made me really excited, specifically now, to work with women, because what I've realized, I'd say in the past 5 to 10 years of my life, is that being a woman and navigating this patriarchal world and having a voice and finding your voice and owning that voice is so, I almost can't find the word for it. It's challenging, to say the least. It's powerful, it's emotional, it's scary. And I think it's really important, because we have so much as women. We have so much wisdom, and we have so much to share, whether it be our knowledge or our warmth or our energy, whatever it is, we bring something that's different. And we are so often shut down and silenced. And so for me, like where I've come now with KLC, I've essentially brought together all these pieces of myself. And I feel so passionate about the women that we've been working with, especially in this industry, because I believe so deeply in the work that they do. It moves me every day to know that I'm helping women get their message across to help others feel better about themselves. And I can't think of anything better than that.
Yeah, that's so true and so beautiful, and we feel so lucky to be able to tap into that experience that you have. And I think one of the things, like you and I talked early on about this whole idea of how women in particular, which happens to be, what our business is really about, of up leveling and uplifting and supporting women who have something brilliant to say in the world. And I think a lot of times they're the ones in their own minds who don't really even know how exceptional they are, you know? What do you think is the biggest challenge faced by women today in terms of communication?
Ooh, what a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is how we come across. You know, when we do know what we're talking about, or when we are given a platform to speak, we're afraid that we're going to come across as maybe bitchy or not feminine when we're delivering our message. And, you know, people will, I, whether it be men or other women, you know, people will judge us for coming across in a certain way. And I think it's just so challenging as women to find this balance between, yeah, I know my stuff, you know? And but at the same time, I also bring this other quality that is feminine and warm and wise to the table that I think is often missing in so much communication. So I think just it's a balance. And I think the challenge that women face is like, yeah, I want to be taken seriously in this world where only facts and science are taken seriously, but we all know at the end of the day that we're emotional creatures. So if you really want to sell something or to convince someone of something, we have to tap into that emotional side. And women are inherently good at that. So I think it's about reinvigorating this quality that we have as women while keeping our academic clout and our knowledge and all those things that we've worked so hard for, and yet bringing back in this human quality that I think we lose in these very professional environments.
Yeah. Well, I've told the story many times of sitting around my last hurrah in corporate America and sitting around the boardroom table, and it was like speak when spoken to. And, I think I probably went through this early on when I started my business. And a lot of it, I have to say, felt misunderstood and not super respected all the time. And I probably used the fact that I was a woman as, I wouldn't say an excuse, but a lot of it was that I think I saw myself as something different, and I didn't know how to sort of embody the who I wanted to become. Does that make sense? Like I felt like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's sort of like sometimes I think we do it to ourselves and we bring like that past version of ourselves into, okay, now I believe in myself and I feel confident to stand up for what I believe in. And, you know, so I think that then you have the Brene Brown who's like talking about vulnerability, and we're like, am I supposed to cry? Am I supposed to not cry? Like, how am I supposed to be taken seriously? And how can I be a person of authority? And I think that's the whole point, right? It's like we need to better understand how to be communicators. And so when we're most often asked, help me become a better public speaker, I think
Right.
that generally is like, okay, so that we can help you work toward getting to that point where you can deliver your message on stage. But I think generally understanding communication is the first key to that. What do you think, Krista, are some of the biggest misconceptions about communication?
Mm. Ooh, let me think about that one. Okay, so first of all, I would say that people generally believe that they only communicate with their words. And to me, I mean, especially with my psychoanalytical background, I understand that there is communication going on between two people or you and a group of people that have nothing to do with your words. It might have to do with body language. It might have to do with just some sort of energetic power struggle that's happening. There's so much that's happening that we don't even realize, but we communicate as soon as we walk on that stage, as soon as we walk into that room, we are being evaluated, we are being critiqued, and we are communicating something. So one of the first things I tell people is like, okay, I know you think this is stupid, but you might want to try smiling at the top when you're starting a presentation or a speech or communicating, because that's actually going to do a number of things. It's going to calm someone's nervous system. It's going to make someone mirror that behavior back to you. But it's also going to set the tone for, I am here as a friendly messenger and I have good information that I'm going to give you. And it's just in a smile. And I can't tell you how many people don't smile when they start to communicate with people. I'm like, if you don't smile at me, I'm going to shut down and be like, oh God, what's about to happen? You know, you get nervous. So
Well, I think yeah.
that's one thing I would say. And I think another big one, and this is something I've heard time and time again, is that I don't think I can be a speaker or public speaker or authority and have a platform because I'm not the top of my career. Like all these other people, they've written books and they're you know they're so famous, but who am I? And I'm like, a great communicator, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with you being at the top of your career. In fact, I think it makes you more influential to be someone who has trials and tribulations and can actually relate to people, because connection is one of the biggest parts of being an effective communicator, connecting with your audience.
I literally love that, because something I talk about with our clients a lot is that, well, I'm looking at somebody else and they're already there. And so who am I? Right. And I also think that it's making that decision to take that step to be that person that gets you to the top of your career.
Right.
Right. It's sort of an inverse sort of ideology. It's that I'm going to make this investment in myself so that I can become the best that I can be where I am, and that's what catapults you forward ultimately. So I
And
love
it's
that.
a reframe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because it's a reframe from being like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not, or you know what I hear all the time? I'm not an extrovert. And I'm like, but that's okay. That's fine. You don't have to be an extrovert to be a great speaker, because I mean, anybody who's worked with speakers know there is no one who's born a great speaker. They are not born, they are made.
Yes.
People work, people train, people work, people, really struggle through the pains of making it seem easy.
Yes.
Because some people make it seem easy, but I promise you they are working with coaches. Like, I promise you.
Yeah,
If you think of
exactly.
your favorite politicians, public speakers, actor, whatever, they all have coaches. They all have coaches. So
Exactly. Well, and the failure has to happen. So in last week's podcast, I used the analogy of, I think public speaking is a lot like learning how to swim. Like you can know everything up and down, left and right about swimming, but until you're thrown in the water and you actually tread water, you are not a swimmer. The same thing with
right.
public speaking. You're not going to be a great public speaker until you've gone out and done it, in which you probably are going to, yeah, feel like it's going to feel awful in the beginning.
Oh my
It just,
gosh,
you have to go through that. So sometimes it's just putting yourself out there. Uh,
that's so
and then
relatable.
the other thing, like I've noticed too in our industry, is people will be like, wow, I really looked up to so and so on Instagram. And then I watched them speak at this conference and I felt really disappointed or let down, And so I think that's also goes to show that you could be really great at everything. Like you could be a master at your craft. You could be running a really incredible business. You could have something amazing to say. You could have written and published an entire study. But if you don't have the training on how to stand up in front of an audience and communicate that, it's not going to stick as well. It's not going to land you where you really want to go, especially if you want to be a paid speaker,
Yeah.
right? Like a real paid speaker. I'm not talking like, you're getting consumables from a company. I'm talking about 15, 20 grand a talk, right? Like that is the reality of what happens for real speakers out in the world. So I do want to kind of touch on that because I did have you come to an industry conference and watch some of the talks there. And so I'd love for you to share just sort of your perception as somebody who's obviously worked with, really high level speakers, looking at our industry and what's been out there and who's up on stage, and talk to me about, we don't have to like call anybody or anything out, but like tell me about some of like the cringiest moments that you saw like watching the level of public speaking that, that's out there in the world.
Yeah.
Or industry
And
conference.
I just want to say, like, I think also in our industry, just to speak to your point from before, in our industry, it's so challenging when you're working with someone who is such a critical scientific thinker. I think that those types of women, like, they're so brilliant, but they don't necessarily have the skills. And it's not their fault. These are skills you have to really be taught and learn. They don't have those skills. So just to preface this, all of these incredible women that we got to see, at the conference, I just want to say, I don't doubt how brilliant they are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any doubt in my mind. Do I think that they are brilliant public speakers? Not yet. They're not there yet, but I'm sure these women are brilliant in it. And I see it so often with people who are really just like intellectually focused, they have trouble bringing that to the outside world. So
Yeah.
at the conference, you know, not that I'm there to be entertained, but when you are going to see someone speak, you need to capture someone's attention. You need to have your attention captured. And in order to do that, you need to not only have your personality come through, but you need to do things and say things that are engaging your audience. And so what I saw most of the speakers do that was really hard for me to watch was they would speak to me in a very monotone voice that I
Mm.
think maybe it was nerves or maybe they wanted to come across as professional, and I get that, but it was, I don't know any other way to say it than it was boring. It was just extremely boring and I would check out. And I bet they had really incredible things to say, but the way they delivered it without any vocal modulation, without any feeling behind what they were saying, I had trouble paying attention. So that was one thing. The second thing was these PowerPoint slides, which I know everybody loves their PowerPoint slides, but they become a security blanket.
Yeah.
So people are not there to look at your slides, they're there to see you speak. Otherwise, I would just look at an email attachment or whatever. So if anything, it's just supplementary. Your slides should not be your bread and butter when you're speaking. But I saw so often women who are just talking to their slides and
Mhm.
letting the slides do the work. And I'm like, no, honey, you have to do the work. Like, I don't care about your slide. I can look at it, but the truth is I'm not reading every detail on that slide. Like, it's not happening.
Yeah.
But I'm there for you to tell me, this is how I feel about this. And, we've got some slides up here just to show you the graph or the trend, but it's about my connection as a speaker to my audience. It's not about my slides. And I think what happens is people rely so heavily on those slides. Again, it becomes
Yeah.
disengaging and a little boring.
Well, you think they probably put too much into their presentation
Right.
that they don't remember everything, and so they have to go back and rely on that when the fix would be to simplify, right? I guess, yeah.
Simplify. Yeah, I
Mhm.
always tell people the point here is not to have a script where you have word for word everything that you're going to say, but it's to have speaking points, things you want to hit. Because if you have a script or too many notes, you're going to sound like, hello, my name is, and it's like you slip into this voice of reading and you don't want that. So just giving yourself a structure, but not all the meat is really the key to having a presentation that's a little bit more off the book, like off the cuff, not overly rehearsed.
Yeah. So what does make someone a great public speaker?
Mm, that's a great question. I think there is an energetic quality, a magnetic quality that somebody has. I think confidence and assurance is a huge part of being a great speaker. Someone who takes up space physically, isn't afraid to physically and energetically take up some space, owning their moment, thinking to themselves, I do belong here. I'm here to deliver an important message. So really they're a little bit less self-conscious about what they're saying, but they have their why really strong.
Mhm.
And I definitely want to return to this why idea because I think that's really important. But I
Okay.
think a great public speaker, if we're talking just like technique, is someone who isn't afraid to use their body, their hands to gesture, isn't afraid to use their voice, change their tone, use pacing, use anything that they can to be engaging. And I think a great public speaker isn't afraid to share personal stories. And I just want to say, Kaylee, that's what makes you a great speaker is that you share so many stories that it makes us, I'm telling you, and whatever, you can laugh about it, but it's really what makes you so magnetic is that you're not afraid to share. And people are so eager to hear personal tidbits of information and stories. It makes us feel closer to the person. It's so important. And I think storytelling is what makes a great public speaker.
Yeah, and I do think that has to be coached a little bit too, because
Oh yeah.
uh, when I think about like women we've worked with on this subject, many of them say, well, that's, I mean, that doesn't sound relevant. Why would anybody else care about my story? You know,
Mm.
and I think that we get a little bit of imposter syndrome of like, who am I and why would my stories matter? And I think I've become more comfortable at telling stories or creating analogies or things like that over time, because I've done it a lot, but like also because I've earned and like built the confidence in being able to say what's on my mind and not worry about what the nerves around what other people are going to think about it. That's what I love about podcasting, because it's one way out, you know? And so, there, I'm not seeing like people's faces like cringing at what I'm saying. So, but like, but public speaking is so scary, right? It's like, isn't it? People didn't you have you told me before something
Yeah.
about like people are more afraid of getting on stage than dying?
Yeah, there is a statistic according to Forbes. There's 75, first of all, 75% of people in our population are terrified of public speaking. And in fact, they say they are more scared of public speaking than death, which I think is so hysterical and also ridiculous. But it just goes to show that everybody is nervous. There's not one person out there that isn't nervous. And I think nerves are probably a good thing because it means you care. If you weren't nervous at all, like, and it does get better as you keep talking. Like you were saying, as I kept telling stories, it just felt easier. As I kept podcasting, it just felt easier to just let it rip. But there's still that element of like, ooh, like I'm about to speak. Like I'm a little bit nervous. I care. It's normal. It's our human reaction.
Yeah, why? Like, why are we so scared?
I mean, listen, I think part of it is we are going in with a mindset that is not necessarily there to give, but there to take. So there's this motivational speaker named Simon Sinek. I know you're familiar with him, Kaylee. And he introduced this idea of the giver's heart, which just like resonated with me so much. We talked about this. Like
Yeah.
change your whole framing, like if you can understand this. So basically what he says is that when you go on stage or when you go to speak and you have this idea that you need something from your audience, like I need them to applaud for me, I need them to respect me, or I need them to validate me in some way or make me feel good about myself, I'm going in with a taker's mindset. I need something from someone else. And it's going to make you nervous because it's going to make you put special attention on yourself and critique every move you make because you're not there for them, you're there for you. And that's what's going to create some nerves. However, if you go in with a giver's mindset, with this idea, and I said I wanted to return to the why. Well,
Yeah.
if you have a strong why, if you are there and you're like, I am here to deliver a message that is bigger than me,
Mhm.
it is bigger than what people think about me. It is bigger than what I can get from people. It's valuable information that I want to share with the community or the world. Suddenly, you take the attention off of yourself. You become a vessel just to deliver that message. And you are there to provide the audience with valuable information. And then it's up to them what they're going to do with it. They can either agree with it and like it and take it or not. But your job is done. You're just there as the messenger with your why. And if you can go in there with that giver's mindset, oh my God, your nerves will, I'm not saying they'll totally go away, but it will really alleviate a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean that one like hit me hard in the sense like I always thought I was giving, right? Like cuz why am I going to stand on stage and talk? Like 2% of people are going to go put themselves out there and do that. I feel like that's just giving on its own, right? Half of these industry conferences you're standing on stage just to develop your own sort of credentialing or rapport or visibility, right? And so there's you when I started to think about that, ultimately, my biggest fear was always stumbling over my words or not sounding eloquent or fluid, saying like or pausing or forgetting or whatever. And then you stop and think about it. Well, that's all about me. I'm worried
Yep.
about how I sound. And I'm not really actually thinking about how can I move somebody that's sitting in front of me, one person even, like help them feel empowered,
Yep.
help them get excited, help them feel optimistic and that there's a potential for them. And I think when for me flipping that sort of ideology and switching it around or from who cares if I fumble over my words, if that person gets excited about it, like that's all that matters, right? So it's interesting. It's
Makes yeah,
you kind of have to check yourself a little bit.
you do have to check. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of an ego check because you're
Yes.
kind of like, maybe you're like, I do deserve to be here, and like, I am the best. And that's great. I want you to have that confidence because, all the women I've worked with are freaking unicorns. They're
Yeah.
amazing. They're
Yeah.
incredible. Every one of them deserve to be on stage speaking. But it's more about like, let me get in touch with that why. And like you said, Kaylee, I am there to influence emotion to motivate action. I always tell people this. This is what we're here for. You're there to influence emotion to motivate action. And so if you skip over the influencing emotion part and you're not in touch with how you feel about what you're talking about, nobody's going to take the action you want because you have to make sure you're aligned. You have to, that's the work that's the internal work you have to do before you get on stage is why do I care to do this? Why am I on stage?
Yeah. Well, this is so good because most of the time it's because I believe that it's an ego thing, right? Like I want to be on stage because that's the next I want to be on the cover of whatever magazine, right? Like I want to be that person. And I remember going to my very first conference 15 years ago in the aesthetic industry and watching these speakers saying, I want that to be me. How could that be me? Because I wanted to have that presence. Like it would make me feel good. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think when you do get the opportunity, you have to almost check your ego a little bit. And I see this too, like talking about stages and social media. Like
Mhm.
women who on our coaching calls, I'm like, every time I talk to them, I'm like, mind blown, mind blown, mind blown. I'm like, why are you not making a video right now and putting this out on social media or hosting it live or something like that? And then they get so scared of like what people will think when they say what's on their mind in a public forum, but like, privately they'll say things to me and just like that's what's so crazy to me.
Oh God. And I think this goes to show just when you practice on a platform all that, so people are on social media all the time. It's
Yeah.
just something culturally that we do. So we don't second guess ourselves. We get so comfortable with it that we're like, whatever, it's social media. And that's really the goal when it comes to public speaking and speaking out loud or speaking on a platform is I do it so much and I've prepped for it so much that I get to a place where I actually feel pretty comfortable doing it. And I also find what's really funny when I coach people on this, as soon as I tell someone we'll be talking and we'll be like really relating and they'll be telling me really interesting things, being so engaging and magnetic. And as soon as I'm like, all right, let's begin, start talking, they'll be like, hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what happened to the person I was talking to? Like, you were so much more fun. Like, I want her
Yeah.
back. And like, I think that's what happens is when we are not comfortable, we put on a mask of, I am professional. I
Yeah.
need to be taken seriously. And it's like, don't look, I'm like, I get it. And there's moments to be professional. And then there's moments to just also show yourself. Don't be afraid to show who you are. And
Uh,
it's hard. It's
it
vulnerable.
really is. It really
So
is. Like I've
vulnerable.
gone through even just, I never like any of the professional videos that are done of me. I always look 10 pounds heavier. I always have cellulite on my arms. I always have a lazy eye. I've got something bulging somewhere, the lighting, always, right? And everyone, like finally at one point, my team was like, we're going to stop making these and stop putting marketing out if you keep picking it yourself. And so I just have to like get over it and no one else notices these things. We're so hard on ourselves.
No, it's called the
And
illusion of transparency. We think everybody can see everything that's wrong with us, but the truth is people can only see like a fraction of what we show them. It's really incredible because we think, what, have you ever had the experience where you go up on stage and I'm sure you've had this experience maybe earlier in your career where you're like, I bombed. That was horrible.
yeah,
And then you have people coming up to you being like, incredible talk. That was
yeah,
amazing. And it's like, because we're our own worst critics, it doesn't always feel good, but what we're showing is actually different than how we're feeling.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of practice and just trusting ourselves and doing the prep. I can't tell you how important prep work is, because when you prep something, it also it gives you that boost of confidence of, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. So what is like, if there was one communication tool that everybody could, like, if, okay, there's one thing I need to learn and be really great at to help me communicate better, what is that one thing?
I don't think there's a question about that. That's
Okay.
storytelling. I mentioned
Right.
it before. It's storytelling. And I mean, just to give you a little science about storytelling, when we hear somebody's story, when someone tells us a story about themselves and shares something with us, for a brief moment as the listener, we actually, our neurons start firing in the same pattern as the storytellers. It's called neural coupling. So we actually completely sync up with the storyteller, and it allows us to actually feel the feelings of that person, and it creates empathy.
That
And
makes so much sense because I'm
it's
thinking about
wild.
someone telling a story about their experience that was sad, and then you almost put your like when I cry at movies or something all the time. Like I'll cry at the dumbest things, but because I envision, right? That's what it's doing. It's making you envision that was your reality and
Yep.
how would that so interesting.
You walk in their shoes, you become the
Yes.
main character. When somebody's like, it's we were chatting about this, oh, changing diapers is the worst. And you're like, yeah, I guess it's the worst. But then if you're like, okay, so when I was 15, I had my first babysitting job. And I thought it was going to be a walk in the park because it was like a sleeping baby, you know? But then I started, I was watching TV and I started to smell something and it just
Oh,
didn't
no.
smell right. And so I walked over to the crib and the baby starts to cry, and the diaper, I open it up and it's a war zone. It's not looking good. It is the worst. It is the most offensive smell you've ever smelled, in your life. And then the baby decides it's going to stand up and throw its diaper. And it throws the diaper across the room. And so then I'm on my hands and knees scrubbing up the poop, trying to get it out of their beautiful white shag carpet, that's going to cost them thousands of dollars to clean. And so if you actually run through the story of your experience, somebody is going to not only relate to you, but they're going to start to feel things. They're going to feel sympathetic. They're going to feel excited. They're going to feel nervous for you. Everything is transposed into them. And suddenly you're linked up. So after you share that story, someone feels like they can trust you and they can feel like they can relate to you. And if anything you want to happen after that, they're going to be a lot more receptive.
Well, and is that why, like, when someone walks out and they're like, that person's a great speaker, is it because they felt moved by that speaker? Is that like essentially
Yeah,
what they're saying is that they compelled me to feel like I want to take action.
absolutely. I think that's the whole point, is that if you can make someone feel something,
Right.
however you do it, I mean, I think storytelling is the most effective tool to do it. But if there is a way in which you can convey a feeling to someone, that is way more valuable than any fact or statistic that you can communicate. And there's actually this quote by Maya Angelou that I really love, and I always tell people in communication. It's something like, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but no one will forget how you made them
Yes.
feel. Oh, it
Yeah,
gives me goosebumps because I'm like, that is so true. It's just so true.
it really is. So let's sort of like segue that. I think that's a good place to kind of talk about, there's on stage and off stage. And I know as we were developing the content for our program at the end of the month and for what we have really exciting coming up that we'll be launching in that boot camp on the 29th. We talked about like what we're the essence of what we wanted to deliver overall, right? In terms of developing our ability to become thought leaders. And one thing you and I kept going back to is that a stage in today's world can make can take many different shapes and forms. So not everybody wants to get up on stage and become a better necessarily become a public speaker, but they want to feel more confident in their ability to communicate in the everyday things. So whether it's with the team, whether it's with vendors or partners or people you hire, contractors in your business, or negotiations that you're having, even your family, right? So like what's so important to me is helping women understand how to be a better communicator. So let's talk about how being a better overall communicator can benefit somebody in their life and business.
Yeah. So I love what you said, first of all, because yeah, maybe my goal is not to speak on stage. Maybe that's not my goal. But to be an impactful communicator is will change your life in a way that will ripple from your professional life to also your personal life. Whether it means you just speak with more confidence and someone actually will receive what you have to say better in a different way, or you are making hundreds of thousands of dollars on stage, being an impactful communicator will benefit you in so many ways. I mean, first of all, just if you're talking within your team, within clients, to have your team understand you, you are going to save yourself a lot of pain and energy and constant having to check in. And if you can communicate yourself in a clear and effective way where you're being received by your team, it's going to change your business. I can't express how effective being a better communicator could be for your team. But also, to your point, with vendors or clients, maybe you want to introduce a new service and you really are excited about it. If you're not properly communicating that, no one's going to care about this new thing that you've got going on. Like nobody's going to care about it. And I mean, this can go down even to the most minuscule parts of your life where you really want your children to listen to you. I really want my daughter to just finally like clean her room or understand that I cannot be at her beck and call all day long or whatever it is. If and one piece of that, one important piece that I go into, not just in coaching, but in the teaching aspect is you got to know your audience. You got to know who you're speaking to. So that means whether I'm speaking to one person, and maybe that's my child, or I'm speaking to a group of thousands of doctors, there are still some basic things that you can do to be received and to be viewed as a more impactful and effective communicator.
Mhm. Yeah, I love too something you said a couple of times that I keep coming back to as well is that I think a lot of times we expect other people. So one conversation came up about like it just happened today, so it's at the top of my mind. So this is not picking on anybody, but these are like normal types of things, right? Of a big goal for this year is to increase our skincare sales, right? And then I asked the leader of the business, the business owner, talk to me about your skincare, what you're now. Like, I mean, I just the fluff. Like I just don't like it's about results. I don't want to like the $400 serum that maybe will work, maybe won't. Like I'm not I don't know. And so she was going on and on about like how much she didn't really believe in skincare, but she wants her skincare sales to grow. And so it was such an incredible opportunity to say, wait a minute. Are you listening to what you're saying? One, you're talking about basically, I want my team to grow our skincare sales, but I don't really believe in the skincare. I only believe in these 5 products, and here's why. But the hidden, I think, gem, like the hidden treasure inside of all of this is that she has a viewpoint that says, I am all about results and I'm not going to take my clients' money. I'm going to keep them on these specific things because this is what I believe the outcome is. So what ultimately needs to happen, and again, it goes back to your dynamic presence, your communication, your leadership, and showing your team that this is how we operate around here. This is our belief system. This is why we do what we do. And this is why when you check out, these are the 5 products bundled up in one package, everybody goes home with that. Right. And so see the difference between like, oh, I wish the skincare sales would grow. Why doesn't everybody just kind of get in line? Right. So sometimes it's just a matter of really listening, like we talk about checking yourself, but it's listening to your voice that's underneath. It's the next layer. And then learning how to communicate that in a way that will move other people in the right direction. Right. So it just goes back, like I think that piece of embodying that leader who can communicate that in a certain way is everything.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to this idea of alignment, of aligning with what do you want from people? And then how do you want them to feel? But then also, like, you have to be in touch with your feelings about whatever it is. So that's like the why. So there's a big alignment that has to happen. It's sort of like a funnel process where it's like, all right, I've got my why. I know what I'm doing. Okay, what do I want from my audience? Okay, great. This is what I want. Okay, how am I going to get them to do the thing I want them to do? Okay, how am I going to make them feel? And I think you have to be aligned with those things. And that's work that you can prepare for. That's not something that has to happen in the moment. Hopefully you're doing that before you get on stage or before you talk to your team.
Yes.
You understand that. I mean, that's coaching work, that's prep work. That's the hard part of communicating. There's so much communication's the final step. There's a lot of work that goes into making a great speech or a great presentation great that is going to be off stage. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I really love what you said about somebody understanding there's like a nugget of gold within this woman who was sort of like, well, I think this is all BS, but like this and this and this, I actually
Oh
think is
yeah.
great. It's incredible because we are smart, and especially consumers. We're so smart. These days, we understand everyone's trying to sell us everything. When we encounter somebody who gives it to us straight and real, we are suddenly like, sign me up.
So
This person
rare.
is
So
it's
rare.
so rare, but
I know.
it's actually something that you can construct into your speech that is not just genuine, but it's strategic. I
Yeah.
mean, you can literally be like, this is how I really feel about this. I'm going to let people know that, yeah, this is what this is about, but this is the stuff that's gold.
Yeah.
And it's like it's somebody feels like they're getting this insider scoop. There's so many things that we can do just to really I think being ourselves and being honest with ourselves is so important. And like, it is about that giving mindset.
Yeah. Well, and this is all really mindset work because at the end of the day, and I can say this like having gone through this evolution myself, right? And even negotiating your speaker fee. That comes by knowing how to communicate your value, right?
Absolutely.
So like just even I want to become a highly paid speaker and it's the confidence to know you're on the right stage, you're working with the right people, you're showing up in the right rooms, right? All of that is work. Like that's invaluable work. That's not just learn how to breathe and calm your nerves, which is I know something that you're going to be teaching as well in our program in our boot camp at the end of the month, right? Like there are those strategies like to really get yourself like to show up better behind camera. But at the end of the day, if you don't fully believe in yourself and your ability, all of that kind of, is secondary ultimately.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
we have to uncover our limiting beliefs that
Yeah.
might not be totally at the forefront of our consciousness.
Yeah.
Because,
What are real quick, Krista,
yeah,
because I want to spend some time too talking about our
I'll
coming
talk
up.
for hours about
I
all.
know, but I am curious because when you talk about the limiting beliefs, through the coaching work you've done, what are like maybe two or three of the main sort of fears or beliefs that people come to you with that are that sort of roadblock or that kind of bottleneck from helping them unleash into that dynamic presence that they want to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, part of it is what we spoke about earlier is this idea that who am I to be speaking? Who am I? I'm nobody. So that's really a shift internally that has to happen where you own your credentials, you own, how fabulous you are. And, that's something that is internal work you have to do because if you don't believe that you should be on stage, why should other people believe in what you're saying? So it's really a reframe that needs to happen. That's one really huge limiting belief. I mean, I think that goes along the lines of also imposter syndrome, but also somebody who's scared. And you spoke about this, like someone who's scared of stumbling over their words or saying the wrong thing or freezing on stage or whatever it is, like they will use that as an excuse to not try.
Mm,
And the truth is we are all going to fail in the beginning. It's at some point we're going to fail. Maybe it's not in the beginning, maybe we had beginner's luck, maybe it's the fourth time we speak we're going to fail miserably, who knows? But we're going to fail at some point. And it's really about reframing this. Again, it's a reframe. It's all right, I didn't totally mess up. Like maybe I messed up, but it's not a failure. This is an opportunity for growth. What can I learn from this? How can I be better the next time I speak? So I'd say those are the two biggest things that I see as far as limiting beliefs. Just this feeling of who am I, imposter syndrome, and what if I mess up? Like, then what are people going to think of me? And it's, what are people going to think of me? What if people think my hair looks stupid or whatever. We think about, we're in aesthetics, we care about how we look. Like, let's be real.
absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
care. So we are our own worst critic, which is why like that why of I'm delivering important information that's going to help people. It's got to be at the forefront.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the workshop coming up at the end of the month. So essentially, Krista is going to be bringing a lot of these pieces and pearls and things that we've sort of mentioned around, right? So, but I'd love for you, Krista, to talk about just why should someone come to that? Like how can just showing up to, 3 days of intensive work around how you can be a better communicator, improving your dynamic presence, how can that help someone really find their own unique voice and confidence?
Yeah. I mean, I'm so excited about this workshop and I know we're opening it up to all whoever wants to come in, which is so exciting for me because I feel so passionate about helping people communicate, be better communicators and able to spread these incredible pieces of knowledge and wisdom that they have to the world. So I feel super passionate about that. But also just, and this is goes along with aesthetics, it's making someone feel more confident. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the dealers of confidence, and I'm no different than an injector because I'm really helping someone feel better about themselves and how they're being received. And that makes me feel good. So in this workshop, hopefully people will have a taste for, okay, this is something that I actually can do. They'll
Mm,
get a taste for what it feels like, the tools they need to really start utilizing in order to get to that place, but also just to see where they're at as a communicator. Someone might be like,
yeah.
I'm such a confident communicator. And then they come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so feeling not confident. Like, how do I wrestle through this? And I think it's for anybody. It's for someone who maybe wants to have their own podcast or be a public speaker, but it's also for someone who just wants to get their point across to their team a little bit better so that they don't have to repeat themselves a million times. That's so frustrating. So it really runs the gamut for who it's for, but it's for anybody who just wants to be a little bit more impactful in their communication.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about what we'll be teaching in the program.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So our proprietary method at KLC in terms of communication and how to be an impactful communicator is something we've developed. It's a three-step, I'd say, three
Framework.
ingredients that
Yeah.
you need. Yeah, or framework called ACE. And ACE really embodies their umbrellas for, of course, so many smaller things, but essentially it embodies really the heart of what we're trying to deliver here in our messaging, which is the first is assurance, which is our confidence. Step one is getting in line with who you are, your why you deserve to be there, how far you've come, all the things. It's confidence, it's assurance, to be assured. The second step or the second piece or ingredient is connection. And I know I spoke about storytelling, but it's not just about that. It's about storytelling, but also keeping your audience in mind, keeping your audience at the forefront of why you're speaking, meaning how is what I'm saying going to benefit my audience? And really understanding that. So it's a connectivity, not just between you and your audience, but also connecting to their wants and desires. And then the last part, which is really the nitty-gritty coaching part, is the execution. So ACE spells ACE.
Yes.
Execution is going to be the coaching aspect. It's going to be where you have to acknowledge if you are someone who has verbal viruses. A verbal virus would be like a filler word, like uh,
Yeah.
these are things that we're not even conscious of. Like sometimes we don't even know we're saying that. So this is where we get into the nitty-gritty coaching of, okay, framework of how you're going to present your speech. What's your intro like? What's your closing like? How are you going to move your hands? How are you going to modulate your voice? I mean, these are all of the things that are going to come together to make you a better, more impactful speaker.
I love that. Well, and I'm even thinking like on social, or if I'm a trainer and going into practice, right? People coming into my practice to learn from me. And one of my biggest pet peeves is going on like, let's wait till everyone's here. Du-du-du, du-du-du, du-du-du.
Right.
Right. Instead of
Silence.
showing up and taking command and starting on
Yeah.
time. And like, even that is a strategy.
Mhm.
Like, that I think it's so subtle, and these subtleties people don't realize, but captivating other people, there are just little tiny tricks and tools that help you become known for something in a different way.
Yeah, and there's so many tips and tools. And I think what you're speaking to also is facilitation. I mean,
Yeah.
facilitation as female CEOs, leaders, that is so much of what we do because we're leading a team in conversation or through a presentation where hopefully you're not just speaking at them, but you're facilitating an experience. It's really about an experience. So if you show up to a room and you don't have the confidence to actually stand at the front of the room and let people know what you're going to be talking about today, everyone, okay, not everyone's here yet, take 5, grab a coffee. When you come back, why don't we share some wins for the week while we're still buying some time for the other people to show up? Have a plan of action, and it's a lot of that is confidence, a lot of that is just practice, a lot
Yeah.
of it is just having someone, like myself, to teach you the tools and techniques that you can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big thing too, is we forget that, or I shouldn't say forget, but I think over simplify the fact that like we should be able to, or maybe underestimate, right? Like we should just be able to talk and open our mouth, and if we do it enough. But when you work with a coach, you get to unpack, and this is what we'll talk about a lot in these 3 days, right? Unpack what's holding you back, where your own personal, sort of roadblocks when it comes to having that assurance, having that confidence in how you show up and what you're believing in, what you have to say, and why that is so valuable to the person that you're interacting with. um and that can happen through coaching, and
Absolutely.
then being in an incubator where you're actually going through those stumbles and failures with somebody before you get in a safe place, right? Before you get on that stage or in front of the audience that you care about. So it's so awesome, and why I cannot wait to share with everybody what we have coming up. Obviously, the cat's not out of the bag until the end of the month. So if you're interested, just anybody who's listening to this and you're hearing what Krista's saying, you're like, yeah, I'm picking up what she's putting down. This is something I'm really interested in learning about, polishing up, becoming better at. You definitely want to make sure that you jump into our program. It's going to be called Unlock Your It Factor, right? So like if you think about like, how do you become a more confident, impactful, and magnetic communicator on stage, in person, online, this is your ticket to doing it. So I'm really excited. Can't wait for our upcoming workshop together, Krista, where we get to tag team, and I get to learn even more of your really awesome, amazing pearls. So thanks so much for joining today. Is there any other like final thoughts you have, or anything and maybe I didn't ask that I should have, around either just general like becoming increasing your visibility and personal brand, through presence, or about the upcoming It Factor bootcamp?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things for me. I mean, I think the first is that we need to trust that we are enough, in the sense that let's not lose our personalities when we are on social media or presenting or even in front of our team. Like having your essence come out is just so not just engaging but important. And I always encourage people, like, we can train on things over and over again, and like a lot of what I train on is bringing back the human quality to somebody's presentation or speech, because we are such unique and incredible creatures, and that's really what forms connection. So really not forgetting to bring yourself to all of this. I think that's so important to me as a coach, is just reminding people that I can give you the lines, but you got to color them in with your own flair, whatever that means to you. And I think that's what makes everybody an incredible candidate to be a great speaker, because nobody is you. Nobody can do what you. So why me? Well, because there's nobody like you.
Yeah.
That's it.
That. Okay. Was that two?
Oh, and what was the other thing? Now I have to remember.
I lost you.
I got very passionate about that. The other thing is, the other thing is that, there's always room for growth. So for me,
Yeah.
and I've been coached. I'm not going to pretend like I was born this way. I feel that I'm a confident communicator, but there's always room for growth. Like, I still work with coaches to get better, to be more authentically myself. I think being authentic is really like the final steps to being a great communicator. Is okay, now that I've mastered all these little tips and tools, now I have to bring the most authentic version of myself, like the most vulnerable part of myself, to the stage, which is hard. But I think that there's the message that I want to say is there's always room for improvement. Like, there's always room for growth, and to be a better communicator than you currently are, because you might be a confident communicator, but there's always room to kind of take that to the next level. I've found that personally with myself.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's important too, as somebody who, look, I consider myself a high growth individual. I'm constantly focused on my professional and personal development. And I will say this was something that was an after. I knew I wanted to do it. Like, I wanted to really dig in and do this coaching, but it was something that I made sort of, oh, well, when, if and when and then. And I wish I had done it sooner, right? Like, as we always say with anything that's worthwhile, the minute I, decided that I am going to be a public speaker, I put that energy out. I got a call literally within days, first real paid speaking opportunity outside of industry. Like, there is real money to be made if you want to monetize and become somebody who you can become internationally recognized. That's what's cool for me, as somebody who's, I think, very good at certain things in my life, but it's such a great way to take what you already do, step out of your comfort zone, learn a new skill, and then continue to hone in on it. And you can make more and more and more money. And it's something that's complementary to what you're already doing. It's basically just taking your work that you do every day and putting it under a magnifying glass and just like spreading. It's like just fuel on your fire. And it's so cool and scalable in ways that, like, now we have online, we have books, we have so many other ways for you to take like what you learn through this coaching that you get, and to put it out there into the world. So I can't wait. I know you and I are like
We're
bursting at the
so
seams to
chomping
like
at the bit over here.
chomping at the bit. But like, we have uh iterated and tested and proven like every single piece of what we're about to roll out. So like, this is literally world class. So I cannot wait to like take everybody through this. So, but the first step is attending our workshop at the end of the month on the 29th, klcconsultants.com/it factor. And I'll link it up in the show notes. And you will be with me and Krista live virtually, for this. And we will just take it from there. So, Krista, thank you so much for joining me today. And I know you're going to be back, obviously. I think we'll probably circle back up after, maybe next month after the workshop, and kind of recap how it went and some of like our takeaways, if that works for you. So,
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure chatting, Kaylee.
all right. Talk to you soon. Take care.